hair is at that really irritating length where it's not quite long enough to go easily into a ponytail, so I have to stick like 4 or 5 bobby pins in it, which, considering how short my hair is right now, that's kind of a lot of bobby pins. Hello everybody, my name is Kara, and today I'm here with the Birthstone Book Tag. So I was actually not tagged by anyone to do this. I've just really liked the questions. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I just think it's a lot of fun. Also, JG, the creator, who I will link below, she also created this tag with her mom, which I also think is really great. Number 1, January, Garnet. Associated with warding off negative forces and dark energies. Name a book with the darkest/evilest character you can think of. So I guess this is kind of like low-hanging fruit for this answer, but definitely one of the worst villains I've read recently is the Spanish Inquisition from The Bird King by G. Willow Wilson. Now, I had a lot of problems with this book. I really didn't end up liking it. But one of the things that it excels at is communicating exactly how evil the Spanish Inquisition was, how terrible these people were, and how they thought, like, they truly seemed to think they were doing the right thing. And that's one of the scariest things of all, is they were like so assured of their virtue, and I hated it. Like the fact that people can turn something that is supposed to be peaceful and about love and turn it into something that involves torture and murder and just despicable acts, and think that there's not a problem with that, think that they're like doing the right thing. It's pretty terrifying. Number 2, February, Amethyst. Purple is associated with royalty. Name a book with regal qualities. You can base this off of characters or choose the king of all books. And I chose one that does have royal characters, and that is The Princess and the Goblin by George MacDonald. I read this recently. I will link the wrap-up where I talk about it, but I really enjoyed this. When I was really little, I read this once and I hated it. And then my friend Giselle picked this book for me to read, and I was like, this is a good opportunity to see if my mind has changed. And it did. I really enjoyed this the second time around, and Princess Irene is a little girl in this book, and she's one of the main characters. And something I like about this book is how like ahead of its time it was as far as like nobility goes, because for a while you're kind of thinking like, okay, this is like a classic fairy tale, like there are some references to like how kind of a Princess Irene was, and how like her noble birth inspired her to be this like really good person, and like she had all of these inherent qualities because she was of noble birth. And that's kind of something you expect for like this certain period of writing, so it didn't surprise me. But what did surprise me was how much it challenged that in the other characters, especially Curdy. So he is a miner's son, he's definitely a commoner, and he is such a great character, and the book is like very much encourages you to think he's a great character. Like, he's so funny and brave and clever, and he has all of these qualities that a lot of times are associated with people of noble birth. So I think in a way this book kind of challenges that hierarchy a little bit, and I really enjoyed it. Number 3, March, Aquamarine. Washed out. Name a wishy-washy character. A character who is not strong or they're a follower. And I'm gonna go with Inan from Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I did really like some things about this book, but Inan, he did end up being kind of wishy-washy. Like, he was supposedly so devoted to a particular cause or a particular person, but then that would change pretty quickly and pretty easily. Like, his feelings and loyalties would kind of flip-flop pretty easily, considering how strongly he had felt about something just a few minutes ago. So yeah, Inan was not my favorite character in that book. Number 4, April, Diamond. A Diamond in the Rough. Name a book that you loved but is not well known. So that is my birth month and birthstone, and it's also one of my favorite questions because you guys know I love finding underrated gems. And I'm gonna go with The Girl with the Red Balloon by Catherine Locke. I read this book like in February, I think, and it's still one of the best things I have read this year. It's sort of a time travel historical fiction. We follow our main character Ellie, who is on a field trip to the Berlin Wall, and she accidentally gets transported back in time to 1988 East Berlin, which is before the wall fell. And it's primarily about her experience there and trying to figure out what these balloons are and how they're working, because something is going wrong with them. This is an organization that has been helping people escape using these magic balloons, and something isn't quite right anymore. And she meets a few other characters along the way. She meets a Romani boy who ends up being such a wonderful character. Like, he seems like typical brooding bad boy, and he's so much more than that. I do want to mention that there are a couple different timelines in this book, and one of the characters' perspectives you get is from a Jewish person during World War II, and it is from the point of view in a concentration camp. So definitely be aware of that. This book is just it was such a wonderfully crafted novel. The characters, like I mentioned, were so good. Like, the themes this book brought up about family and about love and about sacrifice and grief. And I'm struggling to describe it a little bit because this was a very emotionally intense book, but I thought it was so beautiful. I thought the plot was also really well done, and just like the setting was well described. Like, just everything about this book was so good. and I wish more people would know about it. I think there are a few bigger booktubers who do talk about this book as a favorite of theirs, but it still is not as well known as I think it should be. Number 5, May, Emerald. Said to balance energy. Name 2 characters who balance each other well. I'm gonna go with Nina and her best friend Chris from The Ghost in the Third Row by Bruce Coville. So Nina is our main character, and Chris is a friend she makes at the beginning of this book, and considering that they don't know each other before it, I think the way their friendship was developed was so convincing. I definitely believe these 2 girls are best friends, and I do feel like they balance each other really well, because Chris is sort of the more outspoken and confident one, and Nina hangs back a little bit more, but they have very similar interests and abilities, such as seeing ghosts. And I think that one of the reasons Chris can be so brave is because she knows she has Nina backing her up. And I think Nina is encouraged to act more on her hunches or on her her interests because she knows that Chris is there to encourage her and to kind of take the first step. And I just think that's really great. Number 6, June, Pearl. Associated with loyalty. Name a character who was loyal to the end. And I'm going to go with Froy from the Luminary Chronicles by Melina Marchetta. And Froy is kind of an interesting example because I think the reason he ends up being so loyal is because he starts out a very bad character. He does some really, really terrible things, and the way he has grown up, it's like he's never known kindness from anybody, and he's really like a monstrous character when the main characters find him. But the way he comes into his own, like the way that the kindness starts to affect him and just seeing more of the world is just so beautiful. And I don't think it's portrayed as like other people rescuing him, you know, like he doesn't have responsibility for his actions or anything. I don't think it's portrayed that way at all. And I do want to mention a content warning for, I think it's the first book. One of the things that Froy does when he's first introduced is something that I did not think it possible for an author to come back from. And I think she did it convincingly, which is pretty amazing. It's the only time I can ever remember this happening. And that is that we see him attempt to sexually assault somebody. Just so you're prepared, he doesn't actually go through with it, thank goodness. He is interrupted in time, but that is one of the things that makes him really realize the way that he's behaving is unacceptable and that he has to start thinking of people better. He has to be more compassionate towards other people. And I think it would have been really easy to write this as a, like, using sexual assault to further the development of a male character, because that happens a lot. But I don't think that is what happens here. Like, Froy ends up becoming a really moral person and very loyal to the people he cares about and to doing the right thing. And the fact that he almost did this terrible act, it haunts him for the rest of his life. And it fundamentally changed who he is, because it made him realize that the path he was on was not something he wanted to do. And I definitely understand if that's something that people don't want to read about at all. But when I read that book, I was like, there's no way you can turn him into a sympathetic, much less likable character. Like, I refuse to believe it. I think Melina Marchetta managed to do that because of all the time she spent on his arc and the way that she wrote his character, his development. It felt very respectful. Like, it didn't feel like she was using sexual assault as a cheap character device. Like, it was done so well. And I'm still astonished that she managed to change my mind about him like that. I think it also helps that he didn't actually commit rape, that he was intending to and then was stopped and then realized what he was about to do. I think it helps that he didn't actually go through with it to make his character set up for a more sympathetic arc, but I think still to have somebody almost do something that is that terrible and then to have them end up being such a good and loyal person was pretty amazing. Number 7, July, Ruby, Blood Red. Name a book that made your blood boil, one that made you angry. And I'm gonna go with another book I talked about in that wrap up for last month. That is Vinegar Girl by Anne Tyler. This is a contemporary Taming of the Shrew retelling that enraged me. It took all of the problematic parts about Taming of the Shrew that we generally try and reframe for a modern audience and just completely played them straight with all the misogyny, all the double standards. I hated this book so much. And also the treatment of the sister's mother was appalling. The way that she, like, her death was just like written off. The fact that it seems like she had postpartum depression and that phrase was never used. And the fact that it's like implied that her husband, the girl's father, emotionally neglected her to the point of basically emotionally abusing her. It was just, everything about this book was awful. I hated it. I do not recommend this at all. Like, even the original Taming of the Shrew, with all of its problems, had a more nuanced view of the female characters and feminism in general than this book did. Number 8, August, Peridot, Pale Green. It pales in comparison to other gems. Name a supporting character who you like better than the main character. This is another question I love because I have this problem a lot, actually. A lot of times I will latch on to side characters more than protagonists, and I wonder if part of that is because I'm very I guess, picky when it comes to protagonists. But the book I chose was Summer of Salt by Katrina Leno. This is a really popular book, and I do think the messages in this book are super strong. I do feel like the execution, though, was not very good for me. Like, the writing wasn't that great, and I did like the setting, but the characterization was pretty bad. Like, none of the characters really had any personality, except for the couple of side characters I want to mention, which is the main character's best friend, Vira. She was great, and also the main character and her sister, their mother. I can't remember her name, but she was wonderful. It was so nice to see such a loving and supportive mom in this book, and she just seemed like such a fun character. Like, honestly, I wanted to read more about her story and about her character because she was one of the best developed characters in the book, and she didn't even have that many scenes. It was just great to see such a present and good parent in a book, and the fact that she was so supportive when the main character came out as a lesbian. Like, it wasn't even a big thing. I love that it wasn't a big deal, and this mom, I just would have loved to read more about her, and sadly we didn't get that. Number 9, September, Sapphire. Blue like the ocean, which is calming. Name a book that had a calming effect on you. And I'm gonna go with a recent one, and that is Tom's Midnight Garden by Philippa Pierce. This is a kind of classic fantasy slash a little bit of science fiction because there's like time travel, but I don't normally like time travel, even though I talked about a book earlier that had it in it, and I really liked the way this was done. It's very like unobtrusive, but still very well explored, and this is just such a comforting and cozy kind of book. The writing is lovely. It's so funny, but also very beautifully described. The characters are also very lovable, and I just got so invested in the story, and the atmosphere of this book too is one of the things that makes it so calming, because you feel like you're in this beautiful, calm garden, and it's just lovely. It reminded me a little bit in some ways of The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, which is one of my favorite books, so I think that's probably another part of the reason that I felt very like cozy and comforted by this book, but I highly recommend this. Number 10, October, Opal. Iridescent. Name an iridescent book. This can be a book with a beautiful cover, maybe it's shiny or has lots of color, or you can base it off of a character, somebody who is quirky or colorful. And I decided to go with the cover option, but this is one of my favorite books. I raved about it last year. It's A Sky Painted Gold by Laura Wood. This is I think it's set during the 1920s, but our main character Lou, she has a very like ordinary life, you know, with her family. She's happy, but they're definitely not the upper class. And then this rich family moves into the estate next door, and it feels like some aspects of this book feel very much like I Captured the Castle by Dodie Smith, which I also enjoyed, so I think that's another reason I loved this. Like the sister relationships and the whole like, oh, rich neighbors move in next door and everything. I just love this book. This is another one that felt just so cozy and comforting and charming, but it didn't shy away from some of the bad things about that era. Like this book talks about the racism that Black people faced in that time. I think it even talks about suicide, and I think that was connected to the Great War as well, so World War I. So it's not just a fluffy, cozy book, even though it is, and I like that about it. I think it also has a lot of depth too, but just look at that beautiful cover. I just think it's stunning, and I think the book inside is equally beautiful. Number 11, November, Topaz. Associated with resilience. Name a book with a character who rises to the top in a time of adversity. I'm gonna go with Mimi from Midsummer's Mayhem by Rajani LaRocca. This is an Own Voices Indian American book, and it's a Midsummer Night's Dream retelling, and our main character Mimi is a baker, and she enters a baking competition, and this book, among other things, it's about Mimi's abilities and being proud of what she does, and her just like seeing her self-confidence grow is really lovely. And she does have setbacks, and I think those were handled really really believably. Like she has doubts about what she does. She starts doubting her abilities at one point, but ultimately seeing her come through and seeing her be proud of what she does and knowing that she did well and did her best, it's so wonderful and inspiring to see, and I loved this book so much. And finally, number 12 is December, Blue Zircon. I think that's how you say it. Associated with friendship. Name a book with a friendship you want to be a part of. And my answer is Love from A to Z by S.K. Ali. The friendship between Zainab and her friends back home and a couple of the girls that just kind of start getting pulled into that friend group. I just love their interactions so much. I love all of the people involved too. And I didn't want to pick a like 2-person friendship, because we all know that like a 3-person friend group, sometimes you end up with one person on the outside. That's not fun. So I wanted to pick like a larger group of friends, but I really think I would get along with these girls. They're also like very inspiring. I just admire their strong beliefs so much, like the way that Zainab is willing to fight for what she wants, and not just her. The other girls in the group do it in slightly less obvious ways, but that are no less important. And I admire these girls, but I also think it would just be a lot of fun to hang out with them, and I would love that. Okay everybody, so that was the Birthstone Book Tag. I will tag a few people in the description box. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!